This is the thing that goes out to the.
Well, you got something stuck to the side of your head.
That is
black fluff.
Yeah, it's black from my headphones that
and
are
it's
just disintegrating.
And it's camera side, so I thought I'd better tell you.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks
Well,
very much.
there's a behind-the-scenes take right there.
You've got some
Caleb
black stuff
clearing
on your
fluff
head.
off his head.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, so we're rolling.
We are on there. G'day.
Hello.
To our very limited number of live
live
tuning in.
participants.
Fantastic.
Probably no one.
No, that's right.
No,
But
that's okay.
That's good fun. All right. That's there. All right. Sweet. Good to hit go on this. Wait. Oh, just marking for time. I've got a hard out at 1:45.
How long away is
40 minutes.
that? Yeah, all right.
Great.
That's a good chat.
That's a good chat.
So when it hits 40 minutes on here, when it hits 30 minutes, we'll start wrapping up.
Yeah.
All right. Ready, set, go. Welcome back to another episode of Country Creatives. We normally do our intro at the end.
Yeah, we do. But hey, we're here and we have an absolute legend across from the table. And why not just give a little bit of an introduction to the one Ben and Wrigley? Wow. You, sir, thank you so much. Firstly, thank you so much for coming in today. I'm struggling for words because you have so many different creative pathways and pursuits that we're going to struggle to fit all of them in this episode. But hey, we're going to have a great chat about what you've done, what you're doing, and what is coming up. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. I'm humbled to be here.
So, wow, where are we going to start with this, Reese?
My favourite question usually to get a new creative down in the hot seat. Well, we probably need to know a little bit about you as a person and as a creative. Let's start with that. What is your profession? How do you class yourself as a creative?
Look, I've started calling myself a perceptive.
Oh, please tell me more. Tell me about that.
So,
Ben.
Yes, creative. Like I grew up as a creative. Both my parents were creative. My mother was a sculptor, my father an architect, but he sculpted. And so design was the big thing in the 60s and 70s. And that was my formative life, of course. And mid-century was all the go. Okay, so all the artists. My father worked at the ANU and his job was chief designer of everything at the ANU.
Wow.
So his imprimatur was, we need a new carpet. So he would design a carpet.
Tell me, just excuse my ignorance, ANU is?
Oh, the Australian National University. So the 50s, of course, was when they were building the university. So it was optimism and possibility. And so that was the culture I grew up in.
Wow.
There was nothing you couldn't design or make.
Wow.
Okay. And my father had a workshop, and my entertainment was spending my life making things out of wood.
But before we go too deep, though, you said you consider yourself a perceptive, and I've already got questions about what's the difference between a perceptive and a creative, or what's the alignment? What's the difference?
Okay, a perceptive is someone who solves problems. So everything in life is a problem, and it's just how does one perceive the problem and how does one perceive a solution? So it's very much just the ideas float to the surface in the container of the problem.
Love that.
And so if it's a photographic problem, because I shoot photography professionally, specifically architecture and heritage architecture, then how does one solve that problem? And I think heritage photography particularly is very interesting because one's between an authority, the Victorian heritage problem, and the client who's a developer, and they're at loggerheads with each other. And the guidelines are to be interpreted.
Yeah.
So every job is a problem that needs a perceived result because any delays in that process costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the risks are very high, but it's an interpretive container.
Yeah, wow.
So that's why one has to be perceptive. That's why one has to sort of go, well, how are we going to get through this so that everybody gets what they need?
That's cool.
And that I don't get sued.
That's great. I love that phrasing, and I love that you've put a lot of thought into that and understood your part to play in the landscape that you're dealing with there, and what skills you need to bring, and the actual value that you are is far beyond the guy taking the photo. It's what is the problem that you're solving there? I speak about that kind of topic all day long, but I love that you've put a title to it, that being a perceptive is one that can perceive what's going on and what the path forward is.
Correct. Yes.
Very cool.
Thank you very much.
Defined. It's now defined. Do you understand what a perceptive is?
I like that. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. It's a different word. I feel like a lot of creative industries people that is the biggest challenge at hand, right? That's the reason why we have the job we have, is to creative problem solve.
Yeah.
But you go about explaining that to someone with 1,000 words, and you've just given it one. Write your own business card. Perceptive.
Perceptive, because I mean, cutting one's mustard when one has to earn money.
Yeah.
You pick up your camera.
Yeah.
You walk the walk, knock on the doors, you talk the talk, and then you get the gig.
Yeah.
And you've got to deliver.
Yeah.
And no one's going to teach a freelance photographer, particularly your competition, how to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's very much feeling into the situation so that one delivers.
Yeah.
And the delivery is everything. So that's business.
Yeah.
And for some reason I picked that up quite early, and I was pretty good at it. And so that many people want to be photographers. I didn't want to be a photographer, but photography wouldn't let me go. And it's fascinating, that relationship, that I would push photography away because I want to sculpt.
Yeah.
But the phone keeps ringing. I mean, it's the most peculiar relationship with business. And yet the phone keeps ringing.
That's amazing. Tell me, how did you get to that point? As in, like, we've heard where you started off being surrounded by, architecture, sculptures. How did you get into photography?
Well, my father gave me a camera when I was 9. It was a twin lens reflex, and 20 mil film, and they had a class at school, in primary school. Yeah. And I've been taking pictures ever since.
And you've got some great insights there, and no doubt it's been built over time about the business side of how you get work as a creative, and specifically a photographer. But how did you actually build up those skills, and how did you enter the industry? Is it, like, as you say, many people want to be a professional photographer, but not a whole heap gain the level of success or consistency that you have?
Right. So fear is very prevalent when one starts out. I couldn't relate to people, okay? And yet, growing up in Canberra, the lucky country, the lucky city, the city that never, it's always got business.
Yeah.
And you had to photograph people. And these people were people in power, okay? They're always the executive officers, they're always the principal politicians.
Lieutenant Colonel.
Yeah, all that stuff. And you've got to front up
Yeah.
and take their portrait. And when I started out, I was terrified of these people. And I went, well, just get over it. And so I did. I just made a decision, and I'd walk in with confidence, set up, get my shot. And it became a real game. I was doing 10 portraits for Empire Chambers, so I was doing the top barristers of the country.
Yeah, wow.
And Robert Richter was resisting having his picture taken.
Okay.
And I'd come down from Canberra to Melbourne, and he wouldn't take my appointments. And I went, well, my client wants the shot. He's agreed to have his shot done. So, what's the problem here?
What's the hold-up?
And Robert Richter is quite a character.
Yeah.
And I went, well, how am I going to ambush him? So I spoke to his PA, and I said, when does he come in? He said, he's here at 6:30 in the morning. And I went, great, I'll be here at 6. Can I get in at 6? I set up in his office. He walked in and he went, "What the beep are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm here to take your portrait." And he went, "Okay," he was grumpy as anything. "Okay, get it over and done with." And I said, "Well, I'm taking everybody's portraits and they have to have an object that represents their personality."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, the cigarette will do." And he's standing there with a cigarette and he's really pissed off. I mean, this is fantastic, you know.
That would have made for a great portrait, a real attitude.
Yeah, and it was. And so that's the courage, you know. We have to, I'm paid to get the shot.
Yeah.
So I have to work out how do I get around these wily characters, and you know, and even how to photograph a building has a process to it. And I can photograph a building inside and out, in daylight and in dusk, in 4 hours.
Right.
Okay, and deliver 100 images.
Wow.
So one needs to know how the light changes.
Yeah.
And how to capture all of the architectural qualities in half a day. I don't tell my clients that, you know, because sometimes it's a 2-hour morning shoot and sometimes it's a 2-hour dusk shoot, which is a whole day really.
Yeah, yeah.
So just for those who are interested in business, it's not an hourly rate.
Yeah.
It's a job rate.
Yeah, good.
You know, I'm going to turn up, that's the fee, and I deliver.
Well, that's what they care about. Like, man, we could talk about that for ages. We're not going to, but how you price your services and how you communicate the investment to your clients. It should not be. You shouldn't get stuck in the weeds of this is how much time it's going to take, or this is what you know, the tripod I'm bringing, so I'm charging you extra a little bit there. They don't care about that.
No,
they care about the outcome.
They care about the outcome.
Good one.
Hey, something you said, you know, you conquered the fear of photographing these powerful people. And I feel like that could resonate with a lot of people, especially early on in your career. You have to deal with people and sell your services and then also deliver on it and interface with other humans who maybe don't have the same understanding around what your creative industry is or the process or any of that. Are there any tidbits, you know, like moments or how you tackled that problem of interfacing with people? Because it sounds like you mastered it, right? Or maybe no one ever masters it, but you found ways to get around that fear?
Yeah.
Well, there's 2 incidents that come to mind. One when I was engaged to photograph Bob Hawke, okay, and he was doing a public address in Parliament House.
Yeah.
And there's 50 press all lined up in the same sort of area. And I'm at the back and I'm going, how am I going to get my shot? You know, like, and I went, right. I walked around, I stood right in the front of the whole lot of the press gang. I took a couple of shots. Everybody accepted it.
Yeah.
And then
because you look like you knew what you were doing.
And then I left it so that they could get their shots.
Yeah.
But just for that moment, it was mine. Okay. And then I walked around to the side of Bob Hawke, so where no one was. Bob, the consummate performer, turns to me and says, "Here's your shot." And I go click, click, and that was the shot that actually worked.
Yeah, wow.
So thinking around the problem, thinking, why are the press all over there? Why are they all doing the same thing? So I'm a free agent. And the other most enjoyable time was I was engaged by ATSIC, which is the Australian Torres Strait Islander Commission, to photograph Desmond Tutu meeting the ATSIC commissioners at the Archbishop's house in Canberra. And I was the only photographer, only person in that meeting other than the 5 commissioners and Desmond Tutu.
Wow.
And when I came out of the house, because they'd finished up and I was the first to leave, I came out of the front door. The press gallery was all over the lawn. and I waved to them. And of course, Canberra's such a small, we all know each other. We all grew up together in school and stuff. I had the biggest laugh. The biggest laugh.
Great. That's so much fun.
Because, of course, I got the scoop image and everybody else had to sort of...
Exiting the building image of you.
Of me.
They had that image. I love that. We'll just pause there just so I can remember to make you aware of the table is very loud. It goes through here, through the non-existent buffering into the mic. So
okay, so what am I doing? I'm tapping, am I?
Yeah, fiddling and
Oh, I
that's
stopped fiddling.
Just be aware of it's fine.
Thank you, Amy, for dealing with our short intermission there.
Great. They are I love stories. They are some great stories of some instances where you had to step into the confidence that was required. And I'm assuming that really built a history and a experience that helped you overcome any potential future, confrontations with fear or apprehension.
Well, one has to feed the family. One has to deliver the work. And if one delivers the work, one gets paid and one gets the next gig. We're only as good as our last gig and onward ever onward. And that's the driver.
I'm intrigued, Ben, because you said at the start that you pushed photography away, and what we're hearing so far is some pretty high-profile names and some pretty good success of you being chosen, you being picked as the one for the job. What were you pursuing that you were pushing photography away for, and how did you balance that over a span of your career?
Oh, goodness. It just happens. It just unfolds, okay? Because I was building house, bringing up a family, and photography was so good as an income that it wasn't a full-time job.
Yeah. So
I could do other things.
Nice.
If one gets the mix right, it's a fabulous lifestyle. And I'm a slow learner, but I'm a thorough, deep learner. It took me 3 times to understand photography, the exposure triangle.
Right.
It took me 10 years to learn the relationship between the 3 things.
Wow. The 3 things being?
ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. Okay?
Yeah.
And because I'm so thorough, I then developed the app, the Photog app.
Tell us briefly about this app. It is, I told you off air that I'm going to use it with some students, and you've introduced it to me. It's pretty mind-blowing. Why did you think of creating an app? And just tell us a little bit about what the app is, and how you even went about doing that.
So in the 90s, I had this idea, but the technology wasn't there to make it.
Yeah.
The technology came much later, like 10 years. And it was 15 years before I could realize that concept into the app environment.
And so the concept was?
Layering of images, real images, not AI images, we'll call them that, photoshopped images to pretend to be what the camera was doing. I took every shot in reality so that when I layered them, it would show the difference in apertures and how they changed the depth of field. But you could do that across every lens and every aperture, and so it was fantastic. It was such a beautiful medium. I had to do it. The apps that were in the App Store were crap. They lied. They were simple, and they were just about making money. And I thought, well, where's the truth in this? Where's the integrity in this? So I had to make it took 7 months.
7 months is not a long time for what I know this app looks like, and the people you got involved and the functionality that's included in it. That's pretty good. had you ever made an app before? How
No.
did you?
Oh, look, I was working in the 3D space, so I was doing virtual tours.
Okay.
So I had a technician who was doing all the smarts, all the websites, all the computations around changing 3D photographs or nodes into app environment.
Yeah.
So you could then do a virtual tour of St. Patrick's Cathedral, for example. And while we were working together, we worked for a year, we also did the Photogy app as well.
And how do you spell Photogy?
F-O-T-O-J-I.
Photogy.
Dot app.
App. And it is, for anyone interested, it is primarily the problem that solves is how to understand the exposure triangle and what each element does. Is that right?
Firstly.
And then what?
Then it goes on to explain neutral density filters, polarizing filters, movement. So it's a movement calculator. It shows what sort of softness of waterfall you'd like. So you can dial in the shutter speed. And what's required to photograph that waterfall is at certain shutter speeds, you might need a tripod. And to get the really, really soft stuff, you might actually need to put a neutral density filter on. And it shows each outcome for each shutter speed in combination.
Pretty cool. The reason I'm going to use it is to teach some young people how to or that actual basic principles of the exposure triangle and give them something to reference back to. But I'm more interested in you actually just deciding that, you know, it's been 15 years since you kind of came up with this, man, it would be great if you could do this and show this and explain it this way, and to actually taking the steps and going, well, let's just make it. How was that process for you? What were the barriers that you had to overcome of understanding or of connecting? Because I know you collaborated with a bunch of different photographers on that app as well.
There are 10 photographers who contributed from Australian and American photographers.
And so how did you bring all of those people together to provide that outcome?
I just rang them up. And some of them were my friends and family and myself, of course, because I did most of the photography. And it was just wonderful because there's three parts to it. There's the technical side of how how photography functions. Then there's recipes for how to get sport or food or architecture. So these are the combinations of technology that gives the aesthetic outcome. And then the third element is there's a manual for all of the icons that you find on a camera. So, and some of the things, I learned things. I was learning, what is this one? And so I needed my own app when I hadn't finished it. And it was wonderful because there are generic symbols on all the makes. They might change slightly between Nikon, Canon, Fuji, but essentially they're the same icons. And they haven't changed. So I made a manual for people to hold in the field so that when they get stumped, what's this? They can actually just refer to that. And then there's also explanations for things that don't have icons. And then there's animations of where the memory cards go in, where the batteries go in, and how the lenses come off and things like that. So it's
comprehensive.
A lot of fun.
And so when was the point where you said, I'm gonna make this thing. I'm gonna make it happen. I don't care about photography for the next 7 months of doing the jobs. I'm gonna undertake this new endeavor and pull it together.
So, that came around in 2015. And I just asked my business partner, who happened to be my wife, can I do this? Can I employ this guy for a year?
Wow.
Which is a $40,000 investment. Because it was only part-time, 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, go for it. So I went for it. And the most amazing thing was holding the project together, I didn't know, he'd turn up some days, I didn't know what he was going to do the next day. And I'd wake up in the morning and go, this is what he'll do. And it went like that for 7 months.
Wow.
So it was an inspired product. Like, I'm just making it up as it went along, really. Oh, gee, we need a graphic designer to do to do the icons for the app. So next day you employ a graphic designer.
Wow.
So casual.
Yeah.
Huge life decision to make this product with a lot of investment, but it's just like, just winging it.
Just
winging it. But if nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yeah.
And I don't want to die wondering, really. That's...
Yeah, how many people do you run into and they go, "Yeah, I got this cool app idea for an app, man. I should make it one day." You've made your idea for the app, right?
Yeah.
Are you talking about me? Coming up with a new idea every second week. We should make this into an app.
That's going to be nearly everyone listening to this podcast. Reese, is he talking about me? I'm pretty sure.
But ideas. We have so many of them, and then they're the ones. Then there are the ones that we just back, and we just put all our energy into. And I'm just blessed with a diverse lexicon. I can move between photography and sculpture and housing and building and light, and these are all my mediums. I'll go and lay bricks tomorrow.
I love it
because I love my hands. I love what they do.
Hey, so you mentioned a bit about sculpture. We haven't talked about it yet, and I want to lead into, you've got a show coming up. But before we get to some detail about the show, tell me about your sculptural practice.
Okay, I have tended to work in wood. Wood has, in primary school I was always carving things, and I still do. I collect trees. So my house, my back garden has tree trunks just in big piles, and it's such a fabulous medium. And I was making a playground with some very large logs for a Steiner school in Melbourne, and James from Cathedral Stone had his kid at the Steiner school as well, and I had immense respect for him. He works in stone, and he scaffolds cathedrals and replaces blocks in steeples and things.
Wow.
And I said to him, "Oh God, I'm so amazed what you do with stone. It's so hard." He says, "Wood is harder." And I went, "Really? How?" He says, "Because stone stays still.
Yeah, doesn't move.
Wood keeps moving and cracking and changing, and it's fascinating as a medium to work with that fluidity. And so every tree is different, every wood is different. I can't remember the guy's name, but the first clocks that were made in England, every part of the cogs were different woods for their different properties.
What?
Okay.
Wow.
So the spokes and the outside and the teeth were all different woods chosen for their stabilities and flexibilities.
And so what do you sculpt? You've got tree trunks. What do you turn them into?
I turn them into forms.
Forms. Tell me more about that.
So what's fascinating is sacred geometry is, of course, very interesting, and I've been trying to work out how to use sacred geometry into the forms. And with the recent work, with the 5 wands that I've just finished, I began to realise that they weren't the images of sacred geometry that I was wanting them to be. And then I looked at them and I went, "Oh my God, they are sacred geometry." But it's a new language of sacred geometry.
There's some new language getting hit at me right now. Sacred geometry, what is that?
Okay, so things like stars. and stars in circles,
Uh-huh.
and eye forms. You'll see them on the American dollar, for example.
The
and
triangle
pyramids.
and pyramid, yes.
Yeah.
Is that concentric circle? What's that?
Spiral.
The spiral that loops, and it's what is that called?
The Ouroboros.
Is that what it's called? Is that sacred geometry?
It's the snake eating its tail. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I'm thinking about composition where there's 4 boxes, and as the spiral goes in.
Oh, the golden mean.
Yes, that's right. That's on your app.
Yeah. So yes, they are. They're forms of composition for photography. For example, the rule of thirds, the diagonals, and
Got it.
and the golden mean.
Got it.
And how you flip it, and triangles. So these ways of perceiving the world are innate in our human beingness. And so there's a reason why the pyramids are full of this stuff. There's a reason why alchemy is full of this stuff. And there's a reason why people who go into spiritual pursuits, whatever religion it is, they're full of sacred geometry. You go into the Sacred Heart Cathedral here in Bendigo, and it is just full of and rich of symbolism.
Wow.
And so and with that symbolism, it strikes a resonance with the viewer of the work. So the wands that I've been working on, there's a language that has emerged in my sculpting that I've drawn on and iterated. And it's quite simple, really. It's sort of this sinusoidal. Okay, there's another word for
The
you.
what?
Yeah, say again.
So sinusoidal is corrugated iron. Okay, so it's the waveform.
Yep.
It's the waveform, sound waveform, water waveform, bird in space waveform.
Wow. I just want to say that. Sinusoidal.
Sinusoidal.
What a fun word. Couple of words to say. That's so good. Is it 2 words or is it 1 word?
It's one word.
It's 1 word. Sinusoidal. I'm going to be saying that in my sleep.
Before we go in a bit deeper on the sacred geometry that's coming out in your sculptures, you said the word wand.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, people's imagination goes to Harry Potter wands, little handheld things. But why wands? What is a wand? And you're not talking about just a handheld like witch's wand. A wand is another thing, right? Can be other things than that.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when Harry Potter has a wand, the wand has to have come from a live tree. Okay, so the tree is alive and it's a sentient being, and one asks permission for that wand to be taken from the branch of the tree, and then it becomes the wand because it is imbued with the life energy of the tree. You can't just pick up the stick off the ground and go, that'll do.
Yeah, right.
So divination, which everybody would know, water divining, okay, where they grab a stick, they go to the tree, they ask the tree for a Y fork, and they hold it in a particular way, and then they can use that as an instrument for divination, divining of water. And so I was given a tree, 100-year-old pine tree with a girth of like 3 meters.
Whoa.
And it was like 40 metres tall, this tree.
Oh my golly.
Up at Mount Macedon.
Wow.
And so it had been blown over in the 2019 winds. And I went up and it was still rooted in the ground. So the tree was still alive. So I meditated with the tree and I asked the tree if I could use its body for a series of sculptural works. And then I proceeded to chop it up. My brother-in-law was going to chop it up anyway.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a race, actually, because he was chopping it up and burning it.
Oh.
And I'm chopping it up and trying to keep
saving it.
Anyway, I ended up with 5 large pieces of wood.
Wow.
And I've been carrying these pieces of wood around for 5 years and working on them.
Wow.
As a response to my mother dying.
Wow.
So it was honorary for my mother and also a grief process.
Wow. And so you said you've just completed them?
Yes.
After 5 years?
Yeah.
5 years, 5 wands.
5 years, 5 wands. And So there's an exhibition opening on the 13th of March at 6 p.m. at the Beehive Building, 110 Pall Mall in Bendigo. And it's going to be wild. It's going to be wild. So the wands are connected. So the 5 works are made from the same tree, and they are connected energetically because they are the same tree. And the wands are being brought together in a beautiful room in the Beehive Building. And then after 3 days exhibition and a smoking ceremony from the Jara, hopefully, they go out into the environments of Bendigo and become a pilgrimage. And the wands represent 5 stations of life, from the seed, inception, sustenance, transcendence, and then death. And so they're going out into the five locations that are symbolic of those same things, like the hospital, the cemetery, etc., etc.
And so there sounds like a lot of moving parts to this, and I'm really excited to actually hear your process again, similar to the app, but this has got a few more moving parts, I perceive. How did you bring all these things together? You've got an event happening at a beautifully restored building that doesn't currently have a permanent long-term use, and you've got locations at which these wands are being placed afterwards, and presumably some different elements of the event and structures around the event. Tell us, how did you work all this out? How did you make this happen?
Okay, well, I have to acknowledge Ivan's son. I call him my curator. My curator, and he resists the term. But I was explaining to him why I call him the curator. And he's been able to pull off getting access to the Beehive. He's supporting the works and the vision. I've pulled in Amy Chapman to do sound. I've pulled in Kelly Hartland as well to do words. And we're going, so that when one enters into the Beehive Building, there's an arcade with columns in it. And so that's where Amy and Kelly and I are collaborating on an installation work. So there'll be rubbings of each work hanging in the colonnade.
Wow.
And so as people move in, they'll be reading Kelly's words, they'll be listening to, and they'll be washed. And so there's a cleansing process before people go upstairs. And upstairs they'll be greeted with food and wine. Why not?
Yeah, please.
Are you pleased? The wands will be in a separate room, and you'll have to surrender your telephone if you want to go in.
Wow.
And there's only 10 to 15 people allowed in at a time, because it's sanctified space. It'll be, I'm asking the Jara people to welcome the wands to country, so that when they go out onto country, that they will be blessed by the local Indigenous people.
That's going to be quite the experience.
And so at the other end, apparently, I haven't seen this yet, there'll be a video of me talking.
Nice.
And hopefully I can pull this off, but Dougal James, who owns the building, he's very excited about this event. He wants to showcase what the building can do. And there's another room upstairs, and he wants to have that as a surround projection, 360-degree projection room.
Wow.
And so I'm just working up a video piece to fill that space for him.
Wow. That's amazing.
But based on the same theme of the wands.
Wow.
Which is the 5 stations of life.
That is going to be an amazing experience. Who is able to come? How does people get to this event? How do you get a ticket?
Humanitics.
Nice.
Oh, it's ticketed?
Yeah, it's free. But we're just needing to know how many people are turning up, just getting a measure on the community.
And what's the show called?
The Wands.
The Wands are very easy and
very easy.
Straightforward. I like that. I'm quite excited.
This is going to be pretty epic. and it's will be a couple of weeks after this podcast goes live. So if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I would like to go to that, and you've listened to it early enough to release, then head to Humanitics and search for The Wands, and you'll get all the details of times, exact place, and all of those good things.
You will indeed.
It's quite amazing. Like, it's not often you go to an art show and there's a real spiritual and emotional thing that you're drawing on, or that the pieces themselves are so deliberately connected with what did you call geometry, sacred geometry, and spiritual themes. So I think this is quite an interesting art experience.
Well, it is an experience because it's not for sale per se. Okay, so the intention is not commercial. The intention is my first drive of life, and that is for self-realization, for understanding the self, understanding what matter is, why do I exist at all. So these horrible, esoteric, existential, angsty sort of questions that we suffer, is the inquiry. And so the wands are there for people to reflect on. And in this time of catastrophe and challenge with the environment, I say, well, how can art make a difference? What can I do to sort of stimulate people's growth, people's emotional growth? And subsequently and consequently, how do we then relate to each other with more sensitivity?
Man, that's deep and beautiful. I love it.
Oh, whoops.
How did we get here?
Exactly.
That's quite a big topic to wrap our episode up on today.
What a huge full stop.
So no more questions. I've left you flawless, have I?
No, look, honestly, we could go deeper and deeper and deeper for another 3 episodes. And we may just do that, Ben. We may get you back after the event and after the fact and follow up on the tail end of where these works are in the Bendigo environment and where they can be experienced, and then connect the dots of how you enabled and helped make that happen and collaborated, and how the event went, because there's a big topic there in unpacking the partnership between the Beehive building with Dougal supporting creative pursuits and creative experiences. And there's a lot to really be gleaned from that I think people would be really interested in. But for now, we're going to leave it with that full stop and say thank you so much, Ben, for coming in, and can't wait for this event, mate.
It's been a great pleasure, and I didn't even tell you about the Wand smoked whiskey.
Oh my golly gosh! Hold up! We can't drop that on and then just end the episode, mate. Tell me please. I'm a whiskey fan. Wand smoked whiskey is going to be available at the event. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
And how have you done this?
So, Dougal, bless his socks, owns the Black Swan.
Oh,
and
nice.
Tim works there.
Yes.
And Tim is very excited about catering for the event. And he suggested that he take some of the wand wood and smoke whiskey.
Oh, man. Tim, you're a genius.
Tim, I just ran with it. I thought, I cannot not have that.
Wow, that's another layer on why I'd like to go to this event.
Exactly.
Thanks, Ben. We can't wait to talk more with you in a future episode.
It's been a great pleasure. I thank you both.
Thank you. Good luck with the show.
Oh, yes.
Woohoo! Great. That was awesome. No, honestly, like 40 minutes is like a blink of an eye.
It goes quick, doesn't it?
So freaking quick. And we just like little scratch on the surface of what we could talk about.
Well, I was just pleased to have touched on each topic.
Yeah. I think that was a great overview. And yeah, heaps of opportunity. I've got to run.
You got to run
immediately.
Yeah. Pop that in a safe place.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want me to just put the camera
on my desk?
Yeah. All right.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Great.
Mate, that was cool.
I love talking about myself.
Everyone does.
It's been a great pleasure.
So you is that your you got a bag there as well?
Ah, yes, it is. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
So what are you up to? You
Oh God.
still want to get ready? You got to.
Oh yeah. I've only got 4 weeks.
Yeah. And you still. So I was just. So I've been following along with this beehive business.
Yes.
Just from
Well,
from
Dougal
afar.
wants it to be an arts thing.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know. Look, this is my interpretation. I don't think he knows what that means or what that
No,
is.
not at all.
No.
I haven't met with him yet, face to face, but I'm kind of like watching to see what happens, and then I'll make an inroad. You know, depending on.
All he wants is people to. Okay. And we had a walk around the other day. The only time I've met him.
Yeah.
And he showed us this projection room upstairs.
Yeah, with the circular hole in the middle.
No, that's where the wands are going.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
It's the other end upstairs.
Up again.
Up again.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Okay, so it's another square room at the front, and it's going to have 4 projectors in it, and it's going to be a surround.
And he's got supplying the projectors.
Yep, his building the room.
Right. Okay.
You just need to produce content.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm going to do.
I've got a quick leave here. End session.